Imagine waking in a frozen convent, where sisters lie still in their beds, smiles frozen on their faces like eternal secrets. No illness, no wounds, just peace that hides a terror deeper than death. In 1834 Ohio, 12 nuns vanished into silence, but their whispers of sin and salvation echo still. What divine judgment claimed them? Dare you listen? The winter winds of 1834 howled like forsaken souls across the frost-crusted fields of southeastern Ohio, where the Sacred Heart Convent stood as a solitary sentinel against the encroaching wilderness. Brick walls, weathered by relentless blizzards, rose 2 stories high, crowned by a bell tower that pierced the leaden sky like a plea to heaven. Iron crosses atop the gables glinted dully under the pale sun, symbols of unyielding faith in a land still raw with frontier suspicion. Here, amid 47 acres of snow-blanketed farmland, 17 Sisters of Mercy had carved out a sanctuary of devotion, far from the Protestant-dominated hamlets that viewed their Catholic rituals with narrowed eyes and whispered accusations of idolatry. Founded in 1821, the convent was a haven for the weary immigrants, Germans fleeing poverty, Irish escaping famine shadow, who flocked to the region after the Ohio and Erie Canal's muddy veins brought promise of new life. The sisters taught the children of these settlers in a modest schoolhouse attached to the main building, their voices rising in Latin hymns that mingled with the scent of chalk dust and beeswax candles. They tilled the earth in spring, harvesting corn and potatoes that sustained them through the long, biting winters. Their needlework, intricate embroideries of saints and scriptures, sold in the nearby town of Millbrook, 12 miles distant, providing meager coins for candles, ink, and the occasional bolt of woolen cloth. It was a life of quiet rhythm, governed by the canonical hours, the pre-dawn chime of matins summoning them from sleep, the noonday toll for sext marking shared meals of thin broth and coarse bread, and the evening vespers where shadows lengthened in the chapel, pooling like spilled ink on the flagstone floors. Mother Superior Eleanor Kane, a stern yet compassionate woman of 52, had led the community since 1828. Her face, etched with lines from years of vigil and prayer, bore the weight of responsibility like a crown of thorns. Under her guidance, the sisters flourished in isolation, their world bounded by hedgerows of thorny brambles and the endless whisper of wind through bare oaks. But isolation bred its own shadows. Rumors from Millbrook spoke of popish sorcery in the convent's bells, and travelers avoided the rutted path leading to its gates after dusk, claiming to hear ghostly chants carried on the breeze. That winter was a beast unlike any before. Snow began in late October, soft flakes at first, but by December it raged in furious tempests, piling drifts against the convent's walls until they reached the sills of the ground floor windows. The air crackled with cold, sharp as a blade, and the sisters' breaths formed ghostly plumes in the dimly lit corridors. They had prepared meticulously. The root cellar brimmed with jars of pickled beets and carrots, their glassy surfaces frosted over. The pantry shelves groaned under sacks of rye flour and dried peas. The woodshed overflowed with cords of hickory and maple, split by the stronger sisters in autumn's chill. Candles, molded from tallow rendered in the kitchen's great iron kettle, lined the shelves, their wicks ready to pierce the encroaching dark. Yet, as January's grip tightened, an unspoken unease settled over the convent, like frost creeping across a window pane. Sister Clara Voss, 28, hailing from the misty hills of Bavaria, served as the convent's chronicler. Her ledger, a leather-bound tome with pages yellowed by time, captured the daily pulse of life. Temperatures plummeting to bone-numbing lows, the creak of floorboards under slippered feet during night vigils, the spiritual ecstasies and doubts confessed in hushed tones. Discovered in 1937 during a demolition of the old foundation, hidden in a rusted tin chest buried beneath the chapel altar, her entries begin with orderly script, precise loops and crosses, but devolve into frantic scrawls, ink blots like tears, and margins crowded with desperate prayers. "Lord, have mercy on our souls," she scribbled in one corner, the words underlined thrice, as if to ward off the encroaching void. Among the sisters, personalities shone like candles in the gloom. Young Sister Lydia Hale, barely 24, had arrived 3 years prior from Philadelphia, orphaned by a fire that consumed her family's tenement. Her soprano voice, clear as a mountain stream, led the choir during Compline, filling the chapel with melodies that seemed to lift the rafters toward heaven. Sister Beatrice Lang, 36, the apothecary, tended a herb garden in summer, now buried under snow, harvesting foxglove and willow bark to brew remedies for fevers and aches. Her hands, calloused yet gentle, bore the faint stains of crushed petals, symbols of her earthly ministry. Sister Teresa Grant, 43, handled the ledgers with a mind sharp as a quill's point, stretching their funds through lean times, her calculations a quiet act of faith in divine provision. The convent's architecture mirrored their austere vows. The ground floor housed the chapel, its altar adorned with a carved wooden crucifix, the Christ's eyes seeming to follow one across the room. Adjacent was the refectory, where long oak tables bore the scars of countless meals, and the kitchen, alive with the clang of pots and the sizzle of onions and lard. Upstairs, the dormitory cells were Spartan, each a narrow chamber with a straw mattress, a rough-hewn cross on the wall, and a tin basin for ablutions. The basement, damp and echoing, contained the laundry vats, steaming with lye-scented water, and a modest library of dog-eared Bibles, lives of saints, and faded maps of the Holy Land. No luxuries intruded. Even the windows were plain glass, framing views of endless white fields that blurred into the horizon. This seclusion, once a veil of peace allowing uninterrupted communion with God, now amplified every creak, every sigh. The nearest farm lay 4 miles away, its lights invisible through the blizzards. Millbrooks Road, a frozen ribbon of mud and ice, deterred all but the hardiest souls. In this cocoon of snow, the sisters' world shrank to the convent's walls, where faith was both shield and mirror, reflecting back their deepest fears. The first fracture appeared on January 14th, 1834, a day when the sun hung low and blood-red, casting elongated shadows across the snow. Sister Clara's ledger notes that Sister Lydia failed to rise for lauds, her absence a void in the choral harmony. Mother Superior Kane, her habit whispering against the floorboards, ascended the stairs with a lantern's flickering light. Pushing open the cell door, she found Lydia supine on her bed, limbs arranged with unnatural symmetry, hands clasped over her breast, rosary beads threaded through pale fingers. Her face, illuminated by the lantern's glow, wore an expression of sublime tranquility, lips parted as if in mid-prayer, eyes closed in what seemed eternal repose. No struggle marked her features, no pallor of sickness drained her cheeks. She appeared not dead, but ascended, as if her soul had slipped its mortal coil in a moment of divine rapture. Word spread like frost through the community. The sisters gathered in the chapel, their breaths mingling in the chilled air, murmuring Hail Marys that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Mother Superior dispatched a messenger, a local farmhand braving the drifts on horseback, to summon Dr. Elias Thorne from Millbrook. Thorne, a pragmatic Yankee physician with a Protestant skepticism toward Romish superstitions, arrived bundled in furs, his medical bag crusted with snow. In the dim cell, he conducted his examination, stethoscope to chest, probing fingers on pulse points, inspection of eyes and tongue. His journal, later archived in the county courthouse, reads with clinical detachment. Subject exhibits no contusions, no cyanosis, no evidence of toxin ingestion. Vital organs intact. No pathology evident. Demise inexplicable by natural means. Yet, in a private letter to his colleague, he confessed unease. She looks as though she welcomed the end, a serenity that chills the rational mind. The burial followed swiftly on January 16th, as custom demanded. Father Declan Murphy, the itinerant priest from nearby Lancaster, trudged through waist-high snow to administer the rites. The cemetery, a small plot behind the convent, lay under a shroud of white, grave markers jutting like broken teeth. The sisters, cloaked in black wool, formed a circle around the open pit, their voices rising in the dies eerie, the hymn's Latin verses cutting through the wind like a lament for the damned. Snowflakes settled on Lydia's shroud, melting into dark spots that resembled tears. Sister Clara noted in her ledger. As we lowered her, Sister Beatrice whispered of envy, for Lydia's peace, her escape from this vale of tears. And Sister Teresa gazed heavenward, murmuring of angelic summons in her dreams. Dawn of January 17th brought horror anew. Sister Beatrice did not join for prime. Mother Superior, heart pounding like a trapped bird, found her in identical pose. Hands folded, rosary gripped, a beatific smile, curving her lips as if gazing upon paradise. The air in the cell hung heavy, scented faintly with dried lavender from her herb pouches. Panic rippled through the halls, whispers of plague, of curse, of God's wrath for unspoken sins. Dr. Thorne returned, his horse lathered and exhausted, repeating his futile scrutiny. Again, perfection in death, he scrawled. No ailment, no force. As if volition alone ceased the heart. He inspected the herb stores, jars of dried chamomile, bundles of sage, finding no venom, no anomaly. That evening, the sisters convened in the chapel, flames from beeswax candles dancing shadows on the walls, illuminating faces pale with dread. Mother Superior led the rosary, beads clicking like bones, but the prayers felt hollow, rebounding off the rafters as if heaven had turned deaf. Sister Clara wrote, "A presence lurks here, unseen yet palpable, raising gooseflesh, quickening breaths. We sense judgment, a divine scale tipping for hidden transgressions. Guilt whispers in the silence. Redemption seems distant as the stars. As days blurred, the convent's routine fractured. Sisters spoke less of earthly duties, more of celestial release. Sister Teresa, once pragmatic, now lingered by frosted windows, staring at the cemetery's crosses, murmuring, 'They call us home,' to absolution. Visions proliferated, apparitions of radiant figures in the snow, beckoning with luminous hands. Sister Magdalene, 40, the seamstress with a laugh like bells, confided to Clara of dreams where departed souls danced in ethereal light, free from sin's chains. "Why resist?" she asked, eyes fever-bright. "Death is but the door to grace." Isolation amplified the terror. No couriers could breach the drifts. No aid from Millbrook arrived. The sisters fasted, prayed with blistered knees on cold stone, seeking signs of mercy. Yet, an undercurrent of longing emerged. Envy for the dead's serenity, a spiritual hunger for release from mortal frailty. Themes of original sin wove through their whispers. Had pride infected their vows? Envy their devotions? The convent, once a bastion against the world's temptations, now mirrored the soul's dark recesses, where guilt festered like untreated wounds. Dr. Thorne's parting words to Mother Superior, etched in his correspondence. "This defies medicine, perhaps even nature. Seek answers in your faith, for science fails here." As he departed into the blizzard, the convent sealed itself tighter, a pressure cooker of spiritual turmoil. Sister Clara's pen trembled. "We are adrift in snow and silence, awaiting the next call. Is this punishment or purification? Lord, reveal thy will before we all succumb." The air grew thicker, charged with unspoken confessions. Sisters confessed petty jealousies over a favored prayer book, a warmer cell, seeking absolution in tearful vigils. Yet, peace eluded them, replaced by a chilling anticipation. The bell tower's tolls sounded mournful, echoing across empty fields, a dirge for the living. In this crucible, faith twisted, death no longer enemy, but lover, promising redemption's embrace. As the storm raged on, the convent's legacy hung in balance, a testament to divine retribution where sin's shadows lengthened and salvation's light flickered dim. What hidden transgressions brood in those hallowed halls? The answers lay buried in snow and secrets, waiting to unearth a truth that would haunt generations. Word count for rewritten part, 2,856. This expansion deepens cinematic visuals, e.g., snow textures, candle shadows, wind sounds, infuses spiritual symbolism, guilt as festering wounds, death as door to grace, divine judgment scales, restructures events for tighter pacing with rhythmic short sentences and pauses implied for narration, builds empathy through character backstories and emotional dread, and maintains historical authenticity with period details like canal immigration and canonical hours, all while being fully original in phrasing and flow. The blizzard's fury intensified in those cursed days of January 1834, transforming the Sacred Heart Convent into a frozen tomb, its brick facade encrusted with ice that glittered like shattered glass under the weak winter sun. Winds screamed through the bell tower, rattling the iron crosses as if hell itself sought entry. Inside, the air grew thick, heavy with the scent of melting tallow from vigil candles and the faint, metallic tang of fierce sweat. The sisters, once vibrant in their devotions, now moved like specters through the dim halls, their habits whispering against stone floors polished by years of penitential knees. Isolation gripped them tighter than the frost. No wagon could breach the drifts. No cry pierced the storm's roar. They were alone with God, or whatever force masqueraded as such. Sister Clara Voss's ledger, her bastion of order amid chaos, captured the descent with ink that seemed to bleed across the pages. Her once elegant script, now jagged, like thorns etched by a trembling hand. "The visions multiply," she scrawled on January 19th. Sister Magdalene speaks of golden realms where our lost ones beckon, their forms radiant, voices sweeter than vesper bells. When pressed, she falters, claiming words fail the divine splendor. Yet her eyes gleam with a fervor that chills me. Envy, perhaps, or something darker, like the serpent's whisper in Eden. The temperature plunged, mercury freezing in thermometers borrowed from Millbrook's apothecary. Branches snapped outside like brittle bones, echoing the convent's fracturing spirit. The sisters huddled in the refectory, breath fogging the air, but their conversations turned not to survival, but to surrender, to the allure of an afterlife painted in hues of eternal peace. Mother Superior Eleanor Kane, her face a map of deepening furrows, strove to anchor them. She paced the chapel, crucifix clutched like a talisman, her voice steady during lauds. Yet even she succumbed to the tide. In a private moment with Clara, recorded in the ledger's margins, she murmured, "Child, these departures, they are not losses, but elevations. Pure souls, untainted by earth's mire, called to glory. God's finger points, and they ascend." Her gaze drifted to the frost-veiled windows, seeing beyond the white void, perhaps to judgment's throne. Clara noted the shift. Her words carry the weight of prophecy, but beneath lurks doubt, or is it desire? Sin's shadow lengthens, redemption's price steepens. An omen arrived from beyond the walls. The Hoffmans, sturdy German farmers 3 miles distant, marked the silence. Their homestead, a log cabin with smoke curling perpetually from its chimney, overlooked the convent silhouette. Elizabeth Hoffman, kneading dough by her hearth, noted the absent bell tolls, those faithful calls to prayer that had punctuated the evenings like heartbeats. 3 nights void of sound. Her husband, Heinrich, bundled in sheepskin, saddled their draft horse and ventured forth. But the snow swallowed his progress, drifts swallowing hooves up to the withers. He returned, face raw from windburn, muttering, "No light in the tower, no plume from the stacks. It's as if they've all exhaled, and the place holds still." Prophetic words, etched in Elizabeth's diary, later shared with Millbrook's townsfolk, fueling whispers of divine wrath upon the papists in their midst. January 21st dawned with a pallid light filtering through iced panes, illuminating the horror anew. Sister Teresa Grant, The ledger keeper whose arithmetic had sustained them through lean harvests lay in her cell, composed as a saint's effigy. Hands folded atop her breast, rosary entwined, her ledger balanced on the bedside stool, entries pristine to the last penny. A final notation: debts of flesh acquitted, the soul's balance due in higher courts. Dr. Elias Thorne, summoned by a desperate flare signal from the tower, a rag soaked in lamp oil, ignited briefly, braved the gale once more. His arrival found the sisters assembled in the chapel, 14 now, their forms ethereal, skin translucent as parchment stretched over candle frames. Thorne's journal confesses, they fade, these women, vitality leaching away like sap from winter trees. Whispers replace speech, smiles greet invisible guests. Queries on ailments yield platitudes of blessing and election. Death to them is feast, not famine. His probe of Teresa yielded the enigma repeated, vitality intact, yet life extinguished. Warmth lingered in her limbs, defying decay's grip. No rigor seized her joints. Clara's entry pulses with urgency. Her countenance radiates, as if lit from within by seraphic fire. The others gaze upon her with longing, murmuring of the calling. Pity fills their eyes when they turn to me, as if I cling to shadows while they grasp light. The storm raged unabated, water skins cracking with ice overnight, with stocks dwindling as the great kitchen hearth devoured logs to fend off the encroaching freeze. Practicalities faded. The sisters' gazes turned inward, toward visions that danced like auroras in their minds. On January 22 ND's Eve, Mother Superior convened a vigil in the chapel. Candles sputtered on the altar, casting elongated shadows that writhed like tempted souls. Hymns rose, but altered, harmonies laced with an unearthly timbre, as if echoes from abyssal depths joined the chorus. Clara confided, the melody tugs at my core, a siren's lure promising release from guilt's chains. I resist, yet fear the pull strengthens. Morning unveiled Sister Magdalene, visionary and once jovial, in repose, rosary in one hand, a scrap of vellum in the other, inscribed with imminent. Thorne, now a fixture amid the drifts, demanded inspections of all. His descent to the basement, lantern swinging, unearthed the abomination. Behind a cunning panel in the root cellar, amid sacks of turnips and jars of preserves, a concealed alcove yawned. 13 crosses, hewn from oak, each etched with a sister's name. 3 lay prostrate on a rough-hewn slab. Lydia, Beatrice, Teresa felled offerings. The rest encircled a central crucifix bearing Eleanor's name, inverted in shadow play. Symbols carved, scales of justice, flames of purgation, a lamb slain. Thorne's scrawl trembles. This is ritual, not randomness. They've orchestrated their exodus, marking souls like lambs for slaughter. No contagion, no malady, but a pact, perhaps, with forces veiled as divine. Confronted, Mother Superior met his gaze with serenity's mask. Doctor, heaven's designs elude mortal grasp. The pure are summoned. Resistance is vanity. Her words, laced with biblical echo, for many are called, but few are chosen, hung like incense, sweet yet suffocating. Clara, now among 13, grappled with betrayal's sting. My sisters, kin in Christ, now strangers. Death woos them like a bridegroom, invitations etched in dreams. They pity my reluctance, as a child blind to salvation's dawn. The mercury plummeted to 20 below, windows opaque with frost's intricate webs, mimicking veins of sin. The convent groaned, timbers protesting the burden. Sisters clustered by the kitchen blaze, prayers incessant, urgent as birth pangs, beseeching the final summons, the great unveiling. Vigils rotated at the cemetery-facing pane, eyes straining through ice for spectral signs, hands tracing crosses on the glass. Thorne, stormbound, chronicled the unraveling. Reason rebels. These women will their end, mechanism obscured. faith twisted into fatalism, sin's redemption through self-erasure. January 24th's midnight, winds battering like judgment's gavel, drew Clara from slumber. Corridors echoed with murmurs. She crept, bare feet numb on stone, to the chapel's threshold. Peering through the ajar door, terror seized her. Amid the circle of living sisters, translucent forms interwove, the departed. Lydia's soprano lips moving silently, Beatrice's herb-stained hands extended, Teresa's ledger-precise gaze serene. Not wraiths, but corporeal echoes, aglow with infernal luminescence, touching brows, hearts, igniting bliss in the touched. Mother Superior advanced, encircled by the spectral triad. Their caresses elicited rapture, her features transfigured, eyes ablaze with ecstatic pain. Soon, she intoned, voice resonating like thunder's rumble. Unity awaits, burdens lifted. The call resounds, we heed. The assembly affirmed, harmonies blending with unearthly tones, shadows capering autonomously. Clara fled, barricading her cell, quill flying across pages. Not death, but metamorphosis. The fallen linger, recruiters in this macabre harvest. What transgression birthed this? Pride's fall? Envy's hold? Divine justice, or demonic mimicry? Lord, shield me from the seduction. The ledger's final lines blur with tears, guilt's ledger unbalanced. Redemption's path veers into abyss. They embrace the void as paradise, smiles masking the horror. I alone resist, but the whisper grows. The convent, a microcosm of spiritual warfare, teetered on revelation's edge, sins unspoken, perhaps a collective hubris in their isolation, inviting retribution's hand. Visions symbolize temptation's guise, the chamber an altar to self-deification. In this frozen purgatory, faith's flame flickered, threatening to consume all in its purifying or damning glow. As the storm peaked, the legacy of Sacred Heart deepened its chill, a cautionary parable of how isolation breeds introspection's demons, where calls to heaven might echo from hell. What pacts sealed their fates? The answers lurked in shadows, awaiting the thaw's merciless light. The dawn of January 25th, 1834, crept into the Sacred Heart Convent like a thief, its pale light filtering through frost-etched windows, casting jagged patterns on the flagstone floors that resembled cracks in a shattered mirror. The air hung unnaturally still, devoid of the usual pre-dawn stirrings. No muffled footsteps padding to matins, no distant clatter of porridge pots in the kitchen, no harmonious murmur of prayers rising like incense. Instead, a profound silence enveloped the building, broken only by the occasional groan of settling ice on the roof, as if the convent itself mourned in hushed tones. Sister Clara Voss, the sole chronicler whose ledger had become a lifeline amid the madness, stirred in her cell, her breath forming fragile clouds in the biting cold. Her hands, numb from clutching her quill through the night, ached with the weight of unspoken terrors. Emerging into the corridor, her slippered feet echoed unnaturally loud, each step a reluctant advance into the unknown. What she discovered that morning would etch itself into her soul like acid on parchment, a revelation that blurred the line between divine mystery and human monstrosity. The dormitory cells, once havens of quiet contemplation, now stood as sepulchres. 12 sisters lay in their narrow beds, arranged with eerie precision. Limbs straight, hands clasped over breasts, rosaries intertwined with scraps of paper bearing a single, damning word, fulfilled. Their faces, illuminated by the weak morning glow, bore expressions not of mere peace, but of transcendent rapture, eyes closed in bliss, lips curved in smiles that seemed to mock the living. No signs of struggle marred their forms. No pallor of agony drained their cheeks. They appeared not slain, but elevated, as if their spirits had burst free in a collective ecstasy too potent for mortal frames to contain. Clara's ledger, her final entries scrawled in a script that veered between hysteria and resignation, captures the scene's visceral horror. They departed as one. In the witching hours, summoned by a chorus, I alone resisted. Their skin retains a warmth, as if life lingers just beyond reach, teasing the boundary. But their eyes, if opened, would gaze upon realms forbidden to the unworthy, like me. The scent of extinguished candles lingered, mixed with the faint, sweet decay of wilting herbs from Beatrice's pouches, a olfactory reminder of lives snuffed out in unison. Clara stumbled through the halls, her habit snagging on doorframes, heart pounding like a war drum in the oppressive quiet. Dr. Elias Thorne, who had taken uneasy refuge in Mother Superior Kane's Spartan office, its desk cluttered with half-burned tapers and faded missals, awoke to Clara's distant sobs. He found her in the chapel, slumped in a pew, gaze fixed on the altar where shadows played tricks, twisting into humanoid forms that dissolved upon closer inspection. The crucifix above loomed larger in the dimness, Christ's carved agony a silent accusation against the unfolding travesty. "They're not departed," Clara whispered, her voice a fragile thread, eyes wide with visions unseen. "They encircle us, luminous and insistent, awaiting the 13th to seal the pact. Turn, doctor, feel their breath on your neck, their pleas in your ear." Thorne whirled, lanterns swinging wildly, illuminating only dust motes dancing in the chill air. When he faced her again, a parchment scrap materialized in her trembling palm, inscribed with imminent, as if conjured from the ether. Thorne's journal, preserved in Millbrook's archives with pages yellowed and ink faded, details his examinations with a physician's precision laced with mounting dread. The 12 perished synchronously, hearts ceasing at the stroke of midnight, as verified by the convent's grandfather clock, frozen at that hour. No toxin, no asphyxia, vitality intact, yet volition extinguished. Their countenances radiate in euphoria bordering on the profane, pupils dilated in posthumous wonder. 13 souls, robust in body, felled by an enigma that mocks medical canon. He probed pulses long stilled, listened to chests echoing hollow, and noted the absence of rigor, bodies supple as if slumbering in divine embrace. Yet, beneath the serenity lurked a spiritual malignancy, a perversion of faith where death masqueraded as salvation. Descending to the basement, their lanterns casting elongated shadows that clawed at the walls, they revisited the hidden alcove. The root cellar's earthen scent mingled with mildew, jars of preserves glinting like watchful eyes. Behind a false panel, the tableau had evolved, 12 crosses now prostrate on the stone slab, their names, etched in precise script, joined by Eleanor's, forming a macabre mandala. Only Clara's stood erect, solitary sentinel in the circle's heart, its wood scarred as if by fervent fingernails. Thorne's realization struck like lightning. The rite nears consummation. Not haphazard demise, but orchestrated symphony, each note a soul's surrender. They beckon the last, to forge a chain unbreakable, or so the delusion decrees. Spiritual symbolism abounded. The circle evoking eternity's loop, the cross's inverted icons of sacrifice twisted into self-immolation. Was this divine justice for concealed sins, or humanity's hubris in presuming God's voice? Clara, confronted by her own effigy, spoke in a trance-like cadence, words flowing as if channeled from beyond. Their summons resonates ceaselessly, a melody of paradise promised, fields eternal. Burdens shed like serpent skins. I am the keystone, the vessel to complete the arch bridging realms. Join, they implore, and purpose blooms from our collective ash. Her eyes, fever bright, reflected inner turmoil, guilt for survival, temptation toward reunion. Themes of redemption warped here. Original sins echo in their isolation, pride in deeming themselves chosen, envy of the ascended. Thorne, rationality fracturing, rifled through Eleanor's private quarters, her desk yielding a locked coffer of correspondence, seals broken in haste. The letters, ciphered in a biblical code, verses from Revelation twisted into keys, unveiled the architect, an enigmatic guardian whose missives to Eleanor span months. Decoded under lanterns' flicker, they exposed not celestial decree, but terrestrial treachery. The guardian, promising ascension through sacrifice, instructed on priming the sisters. Isolation to heighten suggestibility, visions induced via repetitive chants and fasting-induced hallucinations. Convene them in vigil, one epistle urged, whisper of angelic beacons, envy the peace of the called. Faith shall be your blade, love your poison. The peaceful visages? Not rapture, but conditioned response, minds molded to welcome oblivion as grace. Deeper delvings revealed the guardian's scope. Correspondences with cloisters nationwide, from Pennsylvania's misty valleys to Kentucky's frontier abbeys, sowing seeds of similar awakenings. Sacred Heart was but a trial, a prototype in a grand schema of spiritual alchemy, transmuting devotion into demise. Thorne's notes tremble. No apparition haunts these halls, but man's malice cloaked in piety. These women, pillars of virtue, reduced to pawns in a profane game. Faith exploited, trust betrayed. Spiritual undertones chilled. False prophets as warned in Scripture, wolves in shepherd's garb, luring flocks to slaughter. Sin's legacy here was not the sisters, but the manipulators, hubris in playing God. Justice deferred to eternity's court. The guardian unmasked. Nathaniel Crowe, ex-seminary scholar banished for heretical tracts on death's transcendence. Obsessed with resurrection's mechanics, he engineered threshold crossings, viewing isolated enclaves as laboratories. Letters detailed regimens, subliminal cues in hymns, peer pressure via shared visions, leveraging bonds of sisterhood to normalize extinction. Present each passing as triumph, he advised. Let envy ferment into eagerness. Their love, pure and profound, becomes the noose they knot themselves. Crowe's aim, a methodology for mass transcendence, proving faith's supremacy over survival instinct, a blueprint for cults yet unborn. Thorne's horror crescendoed. He forges not salvation, but suicide's sacrament, believers dying convinced of holiness. Sacred Heart's tragedy, replicated, could unmake communities, souls lost to delusion's maw. As comprehension dawned, urgency gripped him. Racing to the chapel, he found Clara prostrate before the altar, arms extended in supplication, murmuring litanies laced with longing. The air thickened, scented with phantom incense, shadows coalescing into familiar silhouettes. Lydia's graceful form, Beatrice's steady gaze, or illusions born of exhaustion. "Doctor," she intoned, back-turned, voice ethereal, they unveil vistas sublime. Anguish dissolved, joy unbound, worldly chains shattered. How resist such benevolence? He pleaded, voice cracking, "It's artifice, sister, not God's whisper, but a charlatan's snare. Crowe twists Scripture, poisons piety. Your sisters fell to lies, not light." He brandished decoded pages, ink-stained fingers trembling, recounting the conditioning's cruelty, how isolation bred vulnerability, suggestion seeded doubt in life's worth, envy of the blessed dead eroding will. Spiritual reflection deepened the wound. Faith, meant as shield against despair, weaponized into self-destruction. Redemption sought in shadows, true grace forsaken. Clara turned, eyes pooling with conflict, dread of deception warring with the siren call of unity. The convent, once beacon of hope, now epitomized fallen Eden. Temptation's fruit disguised as divine fruit, biting into which sealed doom. In that frozen sanctuary, as winds howled requiems outside, the battle for Clara's soul raged, a microcosm of eternal struggle. Light versus illusion, truth against seduction. Would she succumb, completing the circle of deceit? Or resist, bearing witness to exploitation's evil? The ledger's final strokes hint at turmoil. Visions vie with verity. Heart yearns for sisters, mind recoils from fraud. Lord, grant discernment, lest I trade soul for solace. Thorn, physician turned guardian, stood vigil, his presence a bulwark against the encroaching void. The legacy of Sacred Heart endures as parable. Faith's fragility, manipulation's might, divine justice's slow grind against human iniquity. In 1834's White Wasteland, 12 smiles masked a symphony of screams, silent testaments to belief betrayed. What fate awaited Clara, the 13th? The thaw would tell, unearthing truths buried deeper than snow. The chapel's air, thick with the residue of midnight vigils, hung like a shroud as Dr. Elias Thorne thrust the decoded letters towards Sister Clara Voss. Pages fluttered in his trembling grasp, ink-smudged revelations under the guttering lantern's glow, Nathaniel Crow's meticulous blueprints for spiritual subversion. "Read this, sister," he urged, voice raw from sleepless nights amid the dead. "Your visions, the serene faces of your companions, not heavenly summons, but engineered illusions. Isolation to fracture resolve, repetitive litanies to seed suggestion, envy cultivated like weeds in a garden of faith. He weaponized your love for one another, turning sisterly bonds into chains. Biblical echoes twisted in Crow's script, promises of collective exaltation, death reframed as the ultimate vow of obedience. Yet Clara, kneeling before the altar's shadowed crucifix, Christ's thorn-crowned head seeming to weep in the flickering light, turned with a smile that mirrored the departed, lips curved in sublime certainty, eyes distant as if beholding seraphic hosts. Frost veined the stained-glass windows, patterning the floor like veins of forgotten sin. "Doctor," she murmured, voice soft as falling snow, yet resonant with conviction, "you grasp only shadows. Will you perceive endings? I see beginnings. Loss, nay, liberation from this flesh's frailty. My sisters thrive in light unshadowed, and their call, it sings in my blood." Themes of redemption clashed here. True grace versus delusion's counterfeit, guilt's absolution sought in surrender rather than repentance. Her words evoked the serpent's subtlety, promises of godlike transcendence, faith's purest longings perverted into fatal allure. Desperation clawed at Thorne. He lunged, grasping her arm to drag her from this sepulchral sanctum, away from invisible presences that chill the air. But Clara uttered a single, serene word, eternal. Her body slackened, collapsing into his arms like a marionette with cut strings. No gasp, no tremor, only profound repose, her face aglow with that inexplicable rapture, rosary slipping from lax fingers. Thorne's examination, frantic in the chapel's echoing vastness, confirmed the pattern. Heart stilled by will alone, no venom, no violence. Conditioned to the core, her mind had commanded cessation, heeding a programmed paradise. Spiritual dread deepened. Divine justice for hubris, or humanity's vulnerability to false prophets, wolves devouring the flock from within. Thorne, sole living soul in Sacred Heart's frozen crypt, endured 3 days of solitary vigil. He tended the 14 bodies, shrouded in habits stiff with frost, laid in the basement's chill to defy swift decay, their smiles eternal accusations. Winds howled dirges outside, snowdrifts sealing doors like judgment seal. Meals forsaken, sleep fractured by phantom hymns, he pondered faith's fragility, how devotion, purest gold, could be alloyed into poison. When skies cleared on January 28th, he harnessed a sled, traversing drifts to Millbrook, a specter of the man who'd arrived weeks prior. Eyes haunted, bearing truths too monstrous for daylight. His official report, filed with county scribes, cloaked horror in propriety, an enigmatic affliction, contained by providential isolation. Bodies interred in a communal grave behind the convent, earth heaped under iron crosses. The church, swift as shadow, sealed the edifice, doors barred, windows boarded, archives locked against inquiry. Yet Thorne's clandestine journals, unearthed post-mortem in 1869 amid his effects, unveil the abyss. Pages dense with pursuit, tracings of similar shadows across the Republic, a Virginia cloister where 9 sisters ascended in slumber, notes clutched, summoned hence, a Pennsylvania abbey, 13 monks in chapel repose after celestial audience, a Tennessee revival, 27 souls felled mid-prayer, visages beatific, common filament, missives from the guardian Nathaniel Crow, expelled seminarian, heretic fixated on death's alchemy. His obscure treatises, pseudonym-veiled in theological rags, preached engineered rapture, surrender of vitality as faith's apex, communities as crucibles for transcending instinct. Guided properly, he posited, the devout eclipse mortality's grip, exemplifying resurrection's prelude. Crow deemed himself messiah of metamorphosis, death's not defeats, but validations. Data in his macabre ledger. Acolytes aided. Infiltrators, disillusioned clerics embedding years prior, eroding skepticism, priming for his epistles. Thorne's hunt spanned decades. False trails from Atlantic ports to frontier outposts. Crow, chameleon-like, evaporated, aliases shed like skins. Closest brush, 1836, a Kentucky hamlet where Crow fled days afore arrival, leaving a scrawled taunt. The harvest endures. Did he perish in his own web, joining a manipulated throng? Or migrate westward, where untethered settlements, Shaker communes, Mormon enclaves, offered fertile soil? Thorne surmised the latter, journals concluding, his craft, honed to perfection, exploits yearning for eternity. Not madness alone terrifies, but replicability. Any charmer with psychological acumen and scriptural guise could orchestrate symphonies of self-slaughter. Sacred Heart moldered for decades, raised in 1875 for tillage. The Johnsons, sturdy yeomen claiming the acres, thrived, save livestock shunning the foundation scar, halting yards short as if repelled by unseen miasma. The cemetery endures, depressions in turf where crosses decayed, wildflowers blooming unnaturally. Vivid in winter thaws, locals whisper of anomalies, wintry luminescences weaving graves, feminine chants in archaic Latin on gale-swept nights, melancholy veiling visitors like unconfessed sin, supernatural residue, or suggestions power amplifying tragedies echo. Thorne's dossiers, bequeathed to historical custodians, gathered dust until mid-20th century parallels. Jonestown cyanide communion, Heaven's Gate's cosmic exodus, Waco's inferno, illuminated patterns. Contemporary sages of the psyche deem Crow's tactics precursors to coercive reformation, sequestration breeding dependence, indoctrination eroding autonomy, peer emulation normalizing oblivion. Dr. Elias Hawthorne, 1990s cult authority pouring Thorne's tomes. Crow didn't assault belief. He amplified it, transmuting sacred into suicidal. Precision chilling, love as lever, envy as engine, isolation as incubator. Sacred Heart saga endures as admonition, faith's dual edge, balm for the weary, blade in malign hands. The sisters, devout vessels of mercy, fell not to wickedness within, but exploitation without, trust betrayed, devotion detonated. Their smiles, once enigmatic, now indict. Innocence corrupted, vigilance forsaken. Isolation, deemed devotional shield, proved Achilles' heel. Absent external anchors, manipulation flourished unchecked. Evil, Thorne reflected, dons piety's robe. Enlightenment's vernacular cloaking annihilation's intent. In frostbitten fields of 1834 Ohio, 14 souls sought redemption's gate, finding deception's maw. Their legacy, interrogate the shepherd's voice, divine or demonic. Guard fate's flame, lest shadows snuff it. For in humanity's deepest hunger for meaning lurks vulnerability to those who peddle transcendence at life's cost. The graves whisper still, hymns faint on winter winds, a requiem for the manipulated, a warning to the watchful. Sacred Heart's silence, broken only by echoes. What calls from beyond? Grace or guile?